Brody, my guy Brandon Cruz, and it looks like Sheets is about to pop in as well. So nice. We've got to get Sheets on the screen here. Look at this. We got a four-man booth for the
I like the 4-man screen better than the 3-man screen.
Yeah, it works out pretty well. We got an interesting little two-gamer. Going to be hard to find ways to get difference. Still waiting on the most important news being the most important news for the first half of the day being the Houston receivers and who's available. As I have Noah Brown in a ton of my lineups right now, and I'm waiting to see. I sort of feel like, maybe if they announce it, well, they're not going to announce it too late. Obviously, it's going to be in the next 40 minutes. But I sort of had a feeling those guys were going to play, Noah Brown at least, and I'm not so sure about Woods. But they both played limited practices this week. It's a playoff game. You'd think that they would have all hands on deck. So interested to see what we do with that. So that's a big piece of news. Going to say what's up to my man Rody first. And Rody, how are you doing? Any overall thoughts you want to touch on this slate before we go over to Brandon and then Sheets?
Not too much. There's a lot of stuff we're still waiting on, like you said. Just keep an eye on things all week. They're moving games, so we got to watch the slate tomorrow with the 3-game what they do, and then we got tonight's game, and how we want to play it. We got a good offense versus a really awesome defense, and then we got an ice cube game going on tonight. So. That's going to be really low owned. I think that Dolphin stack is going to be low owned. So we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's worth talking about. And Brandon, how are you doing, man? I know this is sort of up your alley, right? You like the showdowns. This is pretty close to a showdown.
Yeah, I really like these two gamers because you can usually just get different at one or two places and pretty much be fine, especially today with just the first game being where all the ownership is. Yeah, I think this is a fairly, quote unquote, easier one to get different, even just staying in the first game.
Absolutely. And if you're going to do that, take that approach, if you're going to play players in the second game, it almost doesn't matter who you play because you do still have Q tags on both Mostert. I think he's going to play, and I think that Waddle will play as well. But just in case, maybe have some shiftability in those later games, and are also getting a little bit off the chalk that way. So I like the idea of maybe getting more exposure to that later game than maybe the field will have. Sheets, how you doing, man? And any thoughts on this? It's your birthday weekend, so we gotta win for you this weekend.
Yeah, first of all, the Buffalo game was moved to Monday at 4:30.
Yep.
And officially, Buffalo Bills are soft. That's my comment on that.
I'm with you.
I don't want to hear it. I mean, listen.
I'm with you.
So here's a story real quick. So I went to law school in New Orleans, and my first semester, we had a criminal law final, and we had our first snow in New Orleans since basically the Civil War. And they postponed the criminal law final. They closed the bridges. They closed the streets. The entire city was crippled by 1/32 of a powdering of snow. Okay, it makes sense. They have no idea. You see these people; they've never seen snow. They're slipping like Charlie Brown, like in the middle of the street. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years. I'm teaching the bar exam for a living. And I'm traveling all over the place, and I have to teach a class in Buffalo. And I go to Buffalo, and it's just nonstop blizzard when I get there. It's forecasting for 34 inches or whatever for the next 12 hours. Next day, and I have to get out of there the next day to fly somewhere. And I said, "Is there, what do I do with the what do I do when the flight gets canceled?" They're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Not canceling anything." What do you mean? This is Buffalo. You know what I mean? This is like a Tuesday. I mean, this is what they do. They kind of handle it. And you're telling me that they have to move a freaking football game for Christ's sake? Give me a break.
Honestly. I'm with you. I was frustrated by that as well. I'm also curious how they're going to treat this because there's a lot of people who have already registered for these things. And are they going? I mean, I just want to know, did anybody get any official word from DraftKings? I haven't seen it yet. Obviously, it's only been an hour since this happened.
What do you mean? It's going to stay the same. It has to.
So that's what I'm saying, though. Do they lock at 10? Do they lock at 1:30 Eastern? Are your players from Buffalo locked at 10?
That's an excellent question.
So that's a big piece of stuff.
I am imagining that it doesn't lock until the game time.
That's what I would think too, and I think that they would leave it the same because it's too hard to create a 2-game slate the next day at this point. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I that has to be the case.
Yeah. All right. Well, getting to today's slate, certainly you're going to have a very hard time getting off the board, and obviously that's the name of the game for me for tournaments. I've been doing this a long time, and trying to find a couple spots where we can get a little bit different is going to be what we go on here. So we'll do our normal thing where we go through our who we like the most. I'll talk about my current exposures and stuff like that. But I do think it'd be good to just like maybe touch on some of the plays maybe that don't stand out, but like and maybe that's even for the end, but sort of the get different plays as we go.
I mean, I'm legit like the fourth wheel for this one because quite honestly, I can't possibly build anything until I know what's going on with Houston. I mean,
with the Houston receivers, right? I'm currently building as if they're basically in with a couple lineups that have them as out. And by the way, if they're in, it doesn't mean that these other guys we have to totally ignore just because we need to get different some way or another. And Mechie and Hutchinson are going to be two of the lowest owned players on the slate. But as of right now, I would assume that Noah Brown I really assume plays, and Robert Woods I think will play, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's start off with quarterbacks, and obviously the lowest owned is going to be the later games, especially the two aside. What are you doing with that, Rhodey? Then we'll go to Brandon back, and then we'll go to Sheets, and then to me.
I don't know. I don't mind the two aside. I think they're explosive offense all season long. I think if you are playing the Saturday through Monday slate, the 6-gamer total, nice contest for that. They're really low owned on that one. I mean, Hill and Waddle are like 4% owned less. So, it's going to be really cold there. But I think they're still going to have to play the game, and there's no reason that they don't score points or get a lot of short catches and runs in that game. It's going to be bad weather, but Houston's also going up against a good defense. With the Browns, I think the Browns are a good defense. So there's no the main guys for Hill and Waddle could score a lot. You got Achane and Mostert there too. I do like stacking it up a little bit, and I do like getting different. You don't even need two. You can play a different quarterback, and then I do a lot of these 2-game builds. I do the 2+1. So I'll do like 2 receivers and then the running back from the other team. So I would do like Pacheco with Hill and Waddle. And then I would stack Flacco on the other game and stack it up and run it back with Houston. I get different. There's been a Millie Maker win one time where they had 2 Green Bay receivers, no Aaron Rodgers, and they ran Nick Chubb back a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of built around that. And on the 2-gamers where no one has 2 receivers in the lineup without the quarterback. So I kind of do that as my strategy a lot of times. I think
that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately,
it works good here with the cheaper quarterbacks this week too. Flacco's only 6,100 here.
Yeah, and going to be the mega chalk. So I'm guessing that in terms of ownership right now, you have it Flacco. Do you have it Flacco, Stroud, Mahomes, Tua in terms of what you've got at the moment?
Yeah. That would be similar. I know you just posted your exposures as well. Yeah. In the premium Discord, guys, make sure you get over there. Bobby's got all of his exposures in there right now. Seeing where he's at right now as well for his players. So that looks like how he's got it as well, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll probably make some edits. As Sheet said, it's really hard to know what to do without having the Houston receiver information. But I'm going to assume they're in until I hear differently. Brandon, what are your thoughts? And you can feel free to weigh in on any overall thoughts on the 2-game slate in general. But in terms of quarterback exposure, I know that you play a lot of showdowns. Are you going to eat, most of the chalk? It's going to obviously be very heavily Flacco. And I think that Mahomes still gets the ownership too, and Stroud. But I think Tua is the one who's ignored. So do you find yourself just sort of not playing Tua today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a single game or a single lineup constructor, at least in these 2-gamers and stuff. And so for me, it's between CJ Stroud and Flacco. I have no interest in Tua. I don't believe that. I think the salary on Mahomes, especially if he's going to probably score around 17 to 18 points, is just too much. I think it's going to be just between Flacco and Stroud. And that's actually it's one running back position, one quarterback position, and then 2 wide receiver positions that I'm stuck on. And it's actually dependent on the 700 that I either save by playing Flacco with the chalk or getting different with Stroud. I would ideally like to have Stroud. Mm-hmm. I think he has and certainly if Houston wins this game, I think he has a higher ceiling than Flacco. I think it's going to have to go through Nico. I think it's going to have to go through Woods. I'm projecting the wide receiver in, or the wide receivers in. So I would lean towards Stroud if I'm choosing between these 2 guys, just to try and get different. I'd rather get different at a quarterback than miss on the chalk that slams from Pacheco or Njoku or whatever. I'd rather just eat the chalk there and get different at quarterback, to where those projections between Stroud and Flacco are pretty similar, and the ownership isn't necessarily reflecting that.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think that's really accurate. It's interesting that you mentioned that because I'm looking at my exposure right now, and I've got 43% Flacco at the moment, but I've also got 40% of Stroud. I am probably going to shift a little bit of that to the later game, but I think I can get different with different pieces in the later game that might be lower owned than maybe doing it at quarterback. I do like Mahomes a lot, but I thought the idea of getting more Stroud than Mahomes, maybe doubling the field on Stroud's ownership, maybe getting half on Mahomes, just because I think Mahomes is still going to garner like a ton of ownership just because of his history at Arrowhead and all that. So I have it. That's how I have it. I have Flacco and Stroud as basically a 1 and 1A, and then I have Mahomes, then Tua. But I will force in some Tua just because. Look, we got to find ways to get different, and I'm okay with taking that chance and doing it like Rody mentioned, like a Tua, Waddle, Tyreek, or maybe a Tua. I think the ideal way to do it would be a Tua, A-Chain, Tyreek for me personally. Sheets, what about you at quarterback? I don't think that the receivers are going to affect you much on this position.
Yeah, we're going to have probably going to have the Houston news probably in about 15 minutes or so.
Yep.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. No.
That's right. Oh, yeah, 45 minutes, yeah.
I mean, Saberson currently has Woods projected in and Noah Brown's projected out. So what the hell do I know? I mean, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we'll find all that, which is why, again, since you're thinking that Noah Brown's playing, and I would imagine that Noah Brown would try to find a way to play, even though they're projecting him is in. I'm just kind of waiting. I want to give you guys an idea this way, right? So, there's been a lot of talk about what you're supposed to do on the slate, whether it be like overstacking certain games. Okay. And that seems to have been like the sharp way to play, or at least the sharp way to tell people to play, right? In these 2-game slates. So what I've been hearing is you can really just like kind of overstack Cleveland, Houston. Okay. Or I've heard also that if you wanted to be contrarian, you can kind of overstack Miami, Kansas City. So if you want a way to be different, okay, I mean, this is a little bit weird, but you could just go like 3-man stack from like Houston, and then like 3-man stack from Miami or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that is, listen, it's not the best when it comes to game script, right? Because honestly, if 3 guys are really going to get there from one team, you're probably going to want something from the other side. But in the name of getting different, I think that's not the worst. I will have done worse, all right, than do something like that. But with respect to quarterbacks, I mean, look, the Cleveland and Houston, they have the best. They're in the best weather, you know, and the difference between the 2 weather conditions is just really it's massive. Okay, it's not like it's in October, you know what I mean, game where it's 55 in one place and 72 in another. I mean, you have a dome versus a freaking ice bowl. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I get it. I've heard the arguments. I've heard that weather is overestimated. And I've also seen the reality is that the totals are the same, really, you know? So Vegas is whatever. I want to shout out though to another content provider, someone who I know you really respect, Bobby, and that would be JM to Win.
Love
it.
Yeah.
So he's been around forever. Okay. And he's seen it all. Okay, between the building before optimizers to RL to HQ to freaking Fantasy Cruncher to The Sims and all this stuff, he always has a very, very intellectual way of looking at things, and it's a little different than most people. And I've been following him during the course of the year, and one thing that he's really, and I never back tested, but it makes a lot of sense when he talks about some of these games on full slates, is how the coaches are going to prepare, like what type of games the coaches are going to be preparing to play. Okay. Like if you're playing a team that you're expecting to have a big offensive shootout with, you are going to put the foot on the gas because you know that's coming back at you. You know what I mean? So you're preparing for that type of game. So both like 245-point totals are not necessarily created equal if you could make an argument for why a coach can even perceive that a different type of game is coming. So even though like the Miami, Kansas City total is the same at Cleveland, Houston, I have to believe that like that Reed and whatever and McDaniel, they're not preparing for a freaking shootout. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're preparing to freaking cram the ball. Okay. and 21 and 24 points might win. Okay, where the Cleveland-Houston game, even though it's the same total, they are preparing for a freaking sling fest. Okay, so I wouldn't get too cute about saying, oh, you know what, the total's different in Miami. I just think that the overall approach to that first game is just going to be 10 points higher than the overall approach even of the coaches to the Miami-Kansas City game. I mean, like, Kansas City gets the ball Kansas City gets the ball 4th and 5 at midfield, okay? In 2-degree weather, up 3-0, they could punt. You know what I mean? Like, but you get Cleveland, Houston, you know what I mean? It's just different, okay? So I am going to go back to overweighting Houston, Cleveland, okay? So I'm going to probably, regardless of who the receivers are, I'm probably going to go back and not overthink myself and just get a shit ton of Flacco, shit ton of CJ Stroud. And if those guys in the later games can freaking put up enough points in that weather to beat me, they're just going to have to do it. That's my
Yeah, I'm going to throw out I love what you're saying. I want to throw out to play devil's advocate, a quick counterpoint. That the weather, while being cold, it's not like we had what was going to happen in Buffalo, where there was going to be gusts up to 50 miles an hour. You know, there's still going to be some wind, 10 to 15 consistently, up to 25. It actually, and as you know, like somebody, I think Josh pointed out in here, like, it's what Belichick always used to say. It's easier to throw the ball in cold weather than it is to run the ball. That was his whole belief anyway, because he thought the receivers had an advantage. But I think there's a little bit of a case there. But I overall agree. I'm thinking about maybe just switching my exposures a little bit and maybe getting a little more of that later game, just because I mean, look, the totals are very similar for both these games. You know, they're basically the same. I don't know. I'm still sort of figuring this out. And if anything's out for Houston, it's going to make it seem a little bit more, difficult to do. But I'm still, I don't know. I kind of want to revisit the maybe getting a little bit more of the later stacks. And it doesn't mean you have to use the quarterbacks even, but I definitely want more exposure. And with that said, let's talk about some running backs today, because I think this is a big point. And it seems like a lot of people are going to lock Pacheco in. I've been seeing that a lot of places, that's the right thing to do. Pacheco and Singletary significantly highest owned. I guess I'll start this one off, and then I'll go to Brandon, and then Rody, and we'll go back down to Sheets. I personally like the Miami running backs every bit as much as I like the anything else. So I don't mind even playing them together. I think there's a chance they run the ball 30 plus times, and each of them gets 15 to 20 carries. Now give A-Chain 15 carries, and you just take his average against a team that's been pretty bad against the run. I think it's really reasonable. The Bills are 27th against the run, DVOA. They've given up 8 100-yard games to running backs this season. Chiefs. I'm sorry, the Chiefs. Yeah. So I guess that's my stance, is to be way overweight the Miami guys. Have as much of them as I do Pacheco. And then my other big stance is I am going to be playing a ton of Kareem Hunt. I understand that he's going to have a little bit of ownership, but I will be at probably like 35-40% of him. And I don't mind 3 running back builds. I am playing Hunt in more lineups than I am Ford. In some cases, even leaving the money on the table just to try to find ways to get different. Those are mostly my smaller buy-ins, but that's what I think is I think it's an interesting way to go. I really like the Miami running game. I really like the KC running game. And I actually like the Miami running game better. So the Mostert questionability and the fact that A-Chain's been playing, banged up a little bit, I think we go right back to it and play these guys. And on a 2-game slate, I think you can absolutely play them together and use Pacheco in the flex. I think it's a reasonable route to go, and then just play the passing game of the first game. And I don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly owned. So I like that idea a little bit, playing them both together, because while they might each be 20% owned, I don't think that you're going to see many builds with both of them in there. Brandon, what are you doing at running back? I'm guessing Pacheco's your favorite, but who else you got up there?
No, I'm actually doing the exact same thing. So I'm locking in Pacheco. I'm just playing him and moving on. I would prefer if Mostert is ruled in, because I'd actually prefer to play him and pay 6,700 versus A-Chain at 68. But I mean, it's literally the same thing as you just said. I'm not just saying that to not talk as much, but that's my approach. Like I want the running game I want the running backs of this game. Like that's where I want to focus on. If I get, Singletary or Ford in the flex from the first game, that's fine. But I'm focusing on ways to get a Miami running back and Pacheco in the running back positions.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Rody, how about you at running back?
Yeah, actually, I just right when you said you put both of them together, I built a lineup with Achane and Mostert together with Pacheco even in it. So all three of those running backs from that game, similar to that 2+1 strategy that I had where you'd go two receivers and then the running back type thing. It's the same thing. I do a lot of the 2+1 of the game, and then you could stack the other game, the Houston game or the Browns game in that. So you're not getting a ton of you're leaving the quarterbacks out a little bit and you're kind of stacking it up. But yeah, I really like the Hunt call that you had too. At 4,700 there on DraftKings. I really like that play. Still seeing some ownership, but it's definitely going to be different. I think if you get play even Ford or Hunt, something similar to that even combined, it's possible that two running backs from the same team do work today, and that will eliminate if the running backs score points, that'll bring down the quarterback from that team. So you'll want a different quarterback from that team, so you stack a different way. So it kind of helps you stack different ways when you're doing the double running backs or the 2+1 kind of build that I like. So I think it makes sense. So
yeah, I think so. Sheets, how about you? What are you doing?
So I play a lot of Showdown nowadays, right? So I feel I have a little more vision. Okay, now vision is kind of code for the ability to make terrible plays. Okay. But I'll just throw something out there. Okay. First of all, Pacheco's, game environment, all of it looks like the best play, right? Let's look at what am I looking for? The word I'm looking for, like Slate construction. So let's see what happens. So let's say Cleveland, Houston just completely goes off. Okay. It just becomes a freaking sling fest. Okay. And it just doesn't become like a running back slate, right? And neither of the running backs from Cleveland nor Singletary score over 10 points or 12 points, just because it's a freaking sling fest. Is that going to happen? Probably not, but it could, right? Now you're left with two running back positions, and now you have Miami and Kansas City. I'm going to suggest a couple of things. I'm going to suggest in a 2-game slate, and even for late swap, I think Jeff Wilson is in play for Miami. And if you're really, a glutton for punishment, you'll play Clyde Edwards-Helaire from Kansas City. Okay. It is legitimately like the most gross, but sicko bit of leverage there is, because everybody's going to be on Pacheco. It's going to be 800% owned. And it just makes so little sense. Okay. But first of all, God forbid Pacheco needs to take a rest in a couple of possessions. God forbid Kansas City has to come from behind a little bit and make it a couple more snaps just for freaking scarcity purposes. If I get like a fluke touchdown or anything on a 2-game slate paying $1 million for first with Helaire, I'm going to have a couple of shares. I'm definitely going to play some of them in the Showdown just because you have to play everybody. Mm-hmm. But that's my addition to it. So I will just say, like, everything you guys said is right. I do like, by the way, the Cleveland guys in the same lineup. I do like Mostert and Achane in the same lineup. I think all that makes sense. But I would add to my player pool the Jeff Wilson and the Clyde Edwards players.
Well, an interesting one, because let's take the one thing you could do, and you don't necessarily need the ceiling game from it. Let's say Pacheco gets 9 fantasy points or 8 fantasy points, which is probably a little bit ambitious, but let's say he does. Let's say Kareem Hunt has a decent game. Why not play those two guys just for the interest of differentiating your build? Like you could take a shot. I think those two are actually reasonable. I can't get to the Jeff Wilson if both the other guys are healthy, because I just don't know how many snaps he gets in a playoff game.
Yep.
But they do like Wilson, and if for any reason either of the Miami running backs are out, Wilson, absolutely, I'm in on that idea. I love the idea though of maybe getting a lineup with Edwards-Helaire and Hunt, just to completely differentiate the rest of your build. And I mean, not to mention you're getting one low ownership thing, but it really just differentiates your build. And if no running back today, which we've seen plenty of 2-game sample sizes where no running back scores more than 12 or 15 fantasy points, if you get two guys who even score 8, if you differentiate your build and you can spend up on the other pieces, I think it's interesting enough to at least consider. So I like that you brought that up, Sheets.
And I think that, I don't know what the difference in price between some of these guys are, but if you have issues going into that second game, and you have lineups with like Helaire and like Waddle, you could just go to like a Helaire and Hill maybe or something like that, mm-hmm. and do that, or probably that doesn't really help you too much, but maybe I don't know, whatever. But yeah. So again, 2 games, have a little vision, and that would be my advice.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's start off with Rhodey at wide receiver. Where are you? I mean, there's obvious spots, but I'm curious. Assuming what we know, again, we don't know right now with the Houston guys, so it's a little hard to answer these questions. But who are you high on? Is there any off the board plays that you like? What do you got?
Yeah, I still wondering about the news, obviously, that we're waiting on, but like I don't mind the main guys. They're going to be a little bit chalky though. So I mentioned Waddle is a lower owned guy. He could, at 6,500, he could do it every week. Elijah Moore at 4K is the second guy there for the Browns at lower ownership off Amari. I like him a little bit. I'm going to play a little John Mechie. I know we shouldn't be waiting on him. He's playing for Houston, so he's definitely a guy that I like to stack up with Stroud or in that game. He burned me last week with 1.5 points, so I'm definitely going to throw him in a couple lineups this week. He was getting some rush work, like sweeps and stuff off the side before last week. He just had a really bad game, but I'm going to go back to that again, and I think that's a good spot. I do like Nico this week. He's the highest projected receiver, but the Browns defense is pretty good. Like we do think shootout and such. So maybe, I get a little more Tyreek, Waddle, a little bit more Browns receivers, Amari more in my lineups, and then even a little bit of Rice, but a little bit lower on Rice. But because you do have all these other random receivers, but KC can't catch the ball, and with their frozen hands, I don't know if they're gonna catch it today either. So.
Yeah.
It's a rough one, but there's a lot of cheap guys like maybe Justin Watson's the one that comes to mind. Type of game at 3,400 for a cheap guy. I mean, he's going to be owned though, but he's one that I like better over like MBS and in that go that route, But
all right, how about you, Brandon? What are you looking at wide receiver?
Yeah, when I look at the 2 builds, and I want to try and wait until at least closer to lock to decide.
Yeah.
Kind of where the ownership is going to come in on CJ, because as I said, I'd like to prioritize him over Flacco if I can. If I'm doing that, it's pretty easy for me because like if Woods misses, then I'll play Nico Collins and Schultz together. If Woods is playing, then I'm just going to play Nico Collins and Woods together. Like that's where those are my 2 priorities that I want to fit in. I'm playing Amari Cooper regardless of what happens. I'm playing Njoku regardless of what happens. Like I said, the Raheem Mostert is really where I'm hoping to get different, or just the running back at Miami is where I'm hoping to get different, at least in the contest that I'm in. So I mean, it's pretty at least straightforward for the guys that I want to play today.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I guess as for myself, before we get over to sheets, it's going to depend on what happens with this Houston thing, but I'm assuming right now that they're playing. I'll still mix in some Hutchinson or Mechie. But primarily, Rice and Hill are still. It's interesting with all of that stuff. I do have Rice and Hill as my highest owned wide receivers. Not that that's anything that's especially off the board, but I really don't like. I'm scared for Nico Collins in this matchup. I understand.
I agree. Yeah.
That it's something that I just feel like a little bit uncomfortable with. So I'm trying to get below the field, but I'm actually having a hard time doing it without just like making Rice in almost all my lineups. But I am going heavy on, I'll be over the field on Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, the standard guys, but I'm just going to have a ton of them. And I think Hill's ownership is going to be a little lower than he's being projected. I love Tyreek Hill in this exact situation, not just to mention it's back in KC and et cetera. Even if he's not catching long passes, like they're going to run a million bubble screens. I'd be shocked if he doesn't have 10 receptions today. All he has to do is break one. It's going to be slippery for everybody else too. So take the guy with the best feet in football, and I think that that's totally reasonable. And again, not way off the board. My off the board ones, again, Hutchinson and Mechie, I'll have a little bit of exposure. But the one I like the best is David Bell. David Bell, look, we haven't seen Flacco play without Tillman because Tillman was still playing when he was still there. So David Bell, just even taking the Tillman role, is I think a get different guy who you can definitely get some exposure to. I think he actually will get a little bit of a few looks. People might probably for the wrong reasons, probably because he scored 2 touchdowns in a game where they sat everybody. But I don't know. That's what I'm stuck on. I also think getting a little bit of Cedric Wilson and getting a little bit of Justin Watson will have some ownership, but I do like Justin Watson a little bit as well. He's also a different type of receiver. He actually has, it's not that he has better hands, but he's going to run routes more like a tight end will. It's not going to be like the bombs for Scantling via MVS and Hardman. Although I have to say that the completely unowned MVS and very low owned Hardman are kind of yelling in my ear a little bit. But the main guy is going to be Tyreek, Elijah Moore. I will be overweight whatever Noah Brown's ownership is, depending on when it comes in, and just sort of forcing in some of these other get weird plays. How about you, Sheets?
Yeah, so I'll throw a couple in there. First of all, I think all these Kansas City guys are like showdown plays. Like I don't know if I'll play them in 2-game slates.
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, between Watson, James, Richie James, who I don't even know. Some of these guys are active. Like Justin Ross, is he active? They haven't announced it yet. Kadarius Toney, he might be active.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
I thought he was done.
He logged limited practices Tuesday to Thursday.
He probably will play then.
So you got guys, which means that it's like impossible to pick which one. And you could pick one of them, but with the weather and the total and the this and the that and everything I've said, and with Kelsey probably going to be the guy that they just try to get the ball every time, regardless of what he's done this season. I mean, I think that at most take a dart throw and literally any of these guys. And yeah, it would be the great troll for Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Can't catch a ball in perfect weather to like catch one in the snow or whatever in the freezing cold. Yeah, okay, that would be great. I think that's just going to have to beat me. On the Miami side, obviously we got to watch for the Waddle thing, and Cedric Wilson is probably going to be in play for me regardless whether Waddle is in or not. I'm not going to get down to like Craig Crafts or Claypool. Remember, this is the playoffs. You know what I mean? They're going to go with the top guys, I think. So that's from the late game. From the early game, I reiterate everything you guys said. I prefer to not play Woods at all. If you want to know the truth, what is he really going to do to beat me here? Actually, at 3,600. He doesn't have to do that too much to beat you, actually.
Yeah.
But obviously watch for the injury news there. But yeah, you could be tricky and play Hutchinson and Mechie, even if all those guys are in, I suppose. And yeah, you're scaring me a little bit with the Collins matchup, I guess. But I'm still going to get to him. Cleveland side, I didn't quite do the David Bell, but may I interest you in a completely destroyed and washed Marquise Goodwin maybe at 3K? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get any snaps. I don't know if he's going to do anything. But with Tillman out, is it necessarily going to be David Bell because he did the last couple of because he's been around? Yeah, probably. Okay, but I'm trying to walk that line between saying, oh God, who am I only playing for showdown, and who can I actually put in a 2-game slate? Cooper, the best. Cooper and Moore. I don't have cornerback issues with those guys. I guess Goodwin would be my no shot play.
Yeah. I actually think that's reasonable, certainly for showdown. But I don't mind anybody who wants to play roulette with any of these cheap wide receivers that aren't going to be owned, because I don't, it's not like any of the ones that are even like showing up are necessarily going to get anything. The only one who I feel is guaranteed for targets is probably Robert Woods and maybe Watson for one. Robert Woods will get some targets at least.
We didn't mention we didn't even talk about Rashid Rice. He's
like, we did.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what I was saying is that I couldn't stop getting him. Like, but I think he's going to be he's going to end up as, I think he'll be the second most popular, right?
I don't have to play him. I don't know. I just don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that getting underneath is tough, and is the idea. But I'm having a hard time doing it because I already am afraid of Collins. I'm obviously worried about Waddle a little bit, and then all these guys in the same price tier, and the only one I really like is Cooper. So I'm just ending up with some of it. I also do want to point out that I think that on these 2 gamers, you absolutely I've won a couple of them in the past where I've left 1,000 on the table in certain spots. Usually that's not the right thing in NFL and NBA. But I do think this is the kind of 2-game slate that is a way to get different, where you can just leave that a little bit extra on the table. And
so you would do it on purpose, you're saying?
What's that?
Like you would do it on purpose?
Mostly as it applies to defenses. You know what I mean? First of all, I like the cheaper defenses better than I like the expensive defenses anyway this week. But like leaving 500 on the table or 600 on the table and playing, Miami instead of Cleveland, I think is reasonable.
What are you guys doing in tight end?
Tight end, I'll jump in on this one. My stance is that the highest scoring player on this slate is going to be Travis Kelce. I know there's nothing special about that in terms of he's going to be owned at tight end. I'll be over that field. I've got him 70% right now. I don't plan on changing it. Also a good pivot off of a higher owned, it would be a pivot off of Pacheco, but I actually have them together quite a bit as well. I just have to. I think Njoku is going to be the most popular, slightly over Kelce, and it looks like Schultz is going to be the second most popular. I will take Kelce over both of those guys all day. This is the right conditions. Kelce had the opportunity to go to the Golden Globes last week. Wanted to stay, even though he didn't play. He wanted to cheer on his boy Chandler Jones getting his sack to get his $1 million bonus and be with the team, even though the team gave him the right to go to the Golden Globes or the Emmys. I can't remember which one it was. And I think he's in football mode. I think we see Travis Kelce's best game in a while, and I think that he will be the highest scoring player of any kind on this slate. So I'm going to be mostly on Kelce. Njoku's my next highest owned, then Schultz, and I do have a little bit of Durham Smythe. How about you, Brandon?
So for me, it's Njoku or Kelce as my primary tight end. Like I can't believe, like I understand that Kelce's been underperforming for like the last month and a half basically, but this is the cheapest I've seen Kelce in forever, at least since I've been paying attention. Like I get Kelce at the second or third highest ownership in a tight end position at $6,100. Like you kind of just have to play that. Like at least that's where I stand. You get a discount ownership on him. You get a discount on his price tag. You get like the field isn't on him like that. It's Kelce or Njoku for me, and I'm really considering playing both of those together because that's very affordable.
That's exactly what, and for most of my Njoku lineups, I have Kelce and Njoku. And also, speaking to the leaving money on the table, instead of playing Rice with the extra 500, I'm just using Kelce and leaving 500 on the table. Just another way to get a little bit different with your builds. Brody, how about you at tight end?
Yeah, I mean, not much. I really like the call you guys had there. I do like the Nico Schultz, Stroud stack. I've kind of done that a little bit this year too. Schultz is a big red zone target for Stroud, so if you're playing that route, I don't mind it. But yeah, Njoku is getting a lot of work as well. But yeah, Kelce, this is the lowest price I've seen him all season. I've played him, a little bit this season. He's kind of burned me, but I think he's burned a lot of people. So this might be the week you want to go back to him. At this price tag for sure. So,
yep, absolutely.
I think you guys are all out of your mind.
What do you got, Cheeks?
That's my comment.
Why is that?
I'm betting all you guys $1. Okay.
What are you betting on?
And I'll take Njoku straight up in fantasy points against Kelce.
Well, that's not exactly a bold take considering they're projected the same, but okay.
Okay, but I mean, I guess what are the prices here on these guys?
56 and 61.
Who's 61?
Kelce.
Okay, well. Something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I listen. This might be a stock market thing, okay? But these, and we see this all the time in DFS. Like they keep going down in price, or whatever it is. And there's a reason, okay? I haven't seen Kelce do anything like in a long time, and all I see is Njoku just going crazy. All right, he's got the better weather, he's got the better situation, and I'm not interested. So I'll just say that all you guys can play freaking Kelce. You know what they said in Rocky, right? Women weaken legs. I'm not the slightest bit interested. So you guys can all take Kelce. I'll take Njoku, and we'll see what happens.
For sure. I just want to point out that Travis Kelce has scored more, even in this down year, has scored more fantasy points than David Njoku, has had games of 35 plus. It's not like we haven't seen Travis Kelce have a game all season, and the weather. The situation, one of the worst teams in football against guarding the tight end. I'm in on both of them. But by the way, we do like both of them. I don't think
so. Let's talk about the other guy. The other guy, by the way. I know you mentioned him really quickly. But one thing that we can be very sure of is that between those two guys, they're going to garner a carload of the tight end ownership. Let's put it that way. Okay. And there will be people to play both of them. What about this Smythe thing? I know you mentioned it. That seems like a pretty sharp play. Schultz, I think people are going to play him. He'll be like the third guy, but maybe Smythe is really what you're supposed to do. Unless, I mean, you want does Harrison Bryant get any targets? I don't know. I'm just trying to do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Noah Gray at 2,600. I mean, God forbid they run some stupid trick play for him at the 2-yard line and he gets a touchdown at 2,600. When everybody's looking for Kelsey, that's certainly possible.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's the way to get different is to play something like Smythe
or
who's that other guy from Houston besides Schultz? That people
Akins.
play? Jordan, right?
Jordan Akins.
No, Brevin Jordan.
I think you're talking about from Cleveland. Sorry.
No,
yeah,
I thought
Brevin Jordan.
Houston. Yeah. So again, just throwing stuff out there to get different. Like if you're playing everything else like normal, like you're playing, the guys you mentioned, you're playing Flacco and Cooper and Pacheco and Collins and whatever it is, you got to throw something in, like you were saying. Maybe make one of these stupid tight ends the way to get different. I don't know. We got to come up with something, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm all for the idea of getting different. Smythe, like the thing is, at least you have a starting tight end. The problem is how little they throw him the ball. They may look for him more though in the cold weather. That just tends to be something that quarterbacks do is look more for those quick out routes to the tight end. I think that we might see that today. So I'm okay with the Smythe and the Gray would be my two favorites of the ones you mentioned. If I had to pick another one, it probably would be Brevin Jordan or Jordan Akins, but I think they're very close. All right. We will talk about defenses because I actually think it's kind of relevant today. It looks like the defense's ownership is kind of spread out, which kind of surprises me, to be honest with you. I really thought that the Texans defense would be like unowned. The Texans defense is looking like the second most popular defense at the moment. Or depending on where you look, I guess it's very close.
Well, Flacco's a slinger, man.
Yeah, and I like that idea. But to get different, I was going to say that play the Texans. I don't think I'm going to say that anymore. I would be highest on the Chiefs and Dolphins personally, and that's where I'm at. And I also think on these two gamers, using your defense as a weapon against your offense, whatever stack you have, is a completely viable route that works out actually pretty well. Because that is the stopping of your offense. And if you happen to squeak into one defensive touchdown, it's more that your offense has to put up, and you're only losing one fantasy point from it anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
I'll go next. I think Miami is going to be the least owned of them all. They have a lot of injuries, and Cleveland. I like Cleveland again because I've heard a little bit too much about how bad they are on the road this year. I just kind of don't want to hear it. Against a rookie quarterback, rookie of the year or whatever, but still a rookie quarterback. They still can bring a lot of heat, and the ball's going to be in the air in that game, And when the ball's in the air, that's when pick six happens. That's when and when the guys drop back to pass, that's when sacks happen. Mm-hmm. Sacks don't usually happen when you get 37 rushing attempts by Pacheco. Right. Defensive points usually don't happen when a chain and whatever. However, I mean, as I've noted the whole season, I mean, there's no. I don't say there's no bet. I'm just making this up. I just know from what I see. Like it seems like Tua throws a pick six every freaking game. Okay, he doesn't, but it certainly seems that way. So I guess Kansas City's defense seems to be the most logical. So for me, it would be Kansas City followed by, I guess Cleveland. But obviously, if I get to whatever, I mean, it's not going to make too much of a difference what defense I get to. And like you said, Bobby, literally no problem at all playing Houston receivers with Cleveland defense and that kind of thing.
Yeah. How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the frozen tundra that they're dealing with in Arrowhead, I feel like the Chiefs or Dolphins are the only two that I would consider. Not that I'd don't like playing my wide receivers against my defense. I just feel like if I'm going Miami, if I have a really chalky line, I just think throwing Miami's defense in there, regardless of who I have, is going to just get the line different. If I'm chasing the defense that I realistically want, it's the Chiefs. So those are the two stands that I would take. So as I go through, if I feel like I have a line that's super chalky and it's going to be duplicated, I'm just going to throw the Dolphins defense in there. It's a defense, the most unpredictable position here in DFS. Give me as a discount pricing. Nobody would have them like that. I'm leaning more and more to just playing Miami and just seeing what happens today.
I kind of look. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Just with the from a game theory standpoint. Rody, defenses for you. What do you got?
Yeah, I got the same thing you guys. I like the Frozen Tundra Bowl. to play those defenses. Maybe the Chiefs a little bit more than Miami, but the Browns are a good defense, guys. They're probably the top defense in the league.
Yep.
They do work. So like if they're going to be a little bit lower owned, maybe, then take them. But it looks like everyone's going to be spread out about equal. I wouldn't worry about the ownership as much. I've got all of them. I've got every one of them mixed in depending on the lineup. So I probably like the Chiefs Dolphins game the most for defenses, but then the Browns. And
yeah,
there's no way this is true. Now I'm seeing a tweet saying that it's possible that they play the Bills game on Tuesday.
Get out of here!
Come on, give me a break.
Well, because apparently the weather is the same tomorrow there. It just they were changing it for the wind today, but like it's still like 50% snow tomorrow or on Monday.
I'll just wait a couple of weeks and then like play in the dome somewhere, right?
Yeah, not to be that guy, but come on, aren't we playing football at some point?
No, that they should just move it to the Lions Stadium again. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, go to Detroit. Anyway, all right. So, by the way, all right, let's get to just sort of final thoughts and takes. Look, I have my bold take is not bold in terms of DFS. It's that Travis Kelce is the highest scoring player of any kind on the slate. That's my boldest take, I guess. And my 200,000 or million winner play currently is David Bell, but I'm thinking about switching it over to our old friend Kadarius Toney, because if there was ever a slate he could try to get there for me where it would actually matter, instead of playing him on these stupid 11-game slates, which like I did for the last 3 years, this might be the one. So Toney coming back, they'll at least design a couple plays for him because they always do. He's friends with Mahomes and all that. That's my absolutely completely bizarre take is the Kadarius Toney, who may not even play. Anybody else? Any final thoughts, Brandon? It doesn't have to be anything as ridiculous as that. just anything at all.
Yeah, no, it's still I just want to play one of the running backs from Miami, and I think I am going to play the Dolphins defense because like that just when I'm looking at lines and hand building right now and looking at different lines I built on SaberSim, like that's just getting every line that I want different, regardless of who I end up going with. Like if I think I am going to play the Lions defense or the Dolphins defense and Flacco. I think that would balance that out way more than I initially thought it would.
I agree that they'll be the lowest owned, the Miami defense, and I think that just to point out, like there's been so much narrative about them missing their top pass rusher, and it's real. Like, and there's a real concern there.
Yeah, like all their secondary they're still questionable. Like both, like I think like 2 or 3 safeties on that team is still questionable entering this game.
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely, all that narrative is going to make it the lowest owned. I agree with that, and then you still have the same weather, so I kind of like the idea of that to get different. Rody, Sheets. Any final thoughts before we go to Rody to take us out of here?
I mean, I think I've obviously exaggerated a little bit, but I mean, I think I've given some ideas of like what you can do to get a little bit off the board if that's what you want to do. But again, you could do this in terms of construction too. Like if you play like if you could play Pacheco, Kansas City defense, and not a single other player from that game. Like if you want, and just cram everybody else from there. And that could definitely work. I mean, it really could. It's hard to see everybody failing in a game with a 44-point total, but you could certainly get away with that. As far as a bold take or anything like that, I really just don't have one today.
I feel like you said yours at the start of the show, which was basically that everyone's treating
it's just options, really. I mean, I have no real big take or anything like that. Not that any of them have worked this whole season anyway. So,
well, no, but I agreed with your thinking, and it had. First of all, don't disregard it like that because they've worked for Showdown for sure. I mean, you won the Showdown.
Ooh, not to mention, remember the Cooper play? I said he'd be the highest scorer. That was when he got 60 that week. Or something.
Yeah, and that was against the same team. Absolutely.
But
I like that thinking. Just that everybody's acting like there's at least 10. The Cleveland Houston game is at least 10 points higher than the other game is.
That's true.
That's the way everyone's building.
Yep.
And I think that's an interesting thing. And you pointed that out a number of times when it comes to showdowns consistently. And I think that it's been pretty sharp and it's a good way to look at it. When in reality, these games are actually basically projected the same.
What's happening? I'll put it to you another way, the way I like to put it for showdown. So Cleveland, they're both 44-point total, right? So Cleveland, Houston is being played as if it were 54.
Right.
And Miami, Kansas City is being played like it was 34. Like
yep.
that and that's the difference. They should have just the way distribution works. Just as many times you should get 54 out of Miami, Kansas City as you would out of Cleveland and Houston, and just as many times you would get 34 out of Cleveland and Houston as you would out of Miami, Kansas City. And the people are not playing that way, and that is definitely true.
Yep, absolutely. All right, with that, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Great to see a bunch of you guys in here in the chat and everything. We're gonna let Rody take us out of here. We'll be in the premium Discord if anything does come up. I don't have official word, but it does look like the projections that I've seen, all of them have now changed to have Noah Brown and Robert Woods in.
Okay.
Rody, why don't you take us out of here?
Yeah, nice work today, guys. We almost hit 80 people live viewers in the chat, 74 currently in here. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way out. See us in the Discord. I just dropped the playbook on the site as well. That went live into the little video for you guys on that for the whole weekend slate. So check it out. It includes all the games. And I think, Sheets, one last thing. You did have some huge takes. You had Edwards-Helaire and Jeff Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you are.
There you go. So enjoy, as always, guys. Good luck, and let's get it.
Let's get it.